Hi Bob, so you're new today, yeah? Right, well one of the most basic and important things you need to know about fighting is being able to take a punch. So in this first lesson, basically you just got to stand there and then just let me hit you. So it just gets you used to taking punches, so you know you can take a punch in a fight and you might not blink and flinch. So you just literally got to stand there and hit you. Yeah, I'm going to hit you hard, yeah, definitely, because you get hit hard in the face, so I've got to hit you as hard as I can in the face to get used to it. And yeah, you got to pay up front for the session, and 2 weeks in advance as well. And you've also got to buy your uniform as well. And if you want to get your belts, then you've got to pay for that in advance as well. So yeah, you've got to stand there and let me hit you. Right. Little bit exaggerated, but to me, that makes a bad coach. That's obvious a bad coach. If a coach ever turns around and wants you to stand there so you can hit, so they can hit you, to say you've got to get used to taking punches in the fight, it's complete and utter rubbish, nonsense. Don't do it, grab your stuff and leave. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 other things, in my opinion, what can make a bad coach, which ain't as obvious. And as well, the last thing I'm going to talk about is something which people, not including the 5 things, but it's something what people thinks makes a bad coach, but in my opinion, I don't think it does make a bad coach. So stay tuned to watch the whole video. Right, so before I get on to the not so obvious stuff, there is one more thing I want to say which I think is obviously makes a bad coach, but I have heard of people falling into this trap, and that's coaches what are very money orientated. Now this is such a difficult one because as I've recently started trying to make it as a coach and earn money making a living as a coach, it is hard because obviously you do have to make a living, but there is so far like how it goes. Like there's making a living and then there's just being greedy. So that is something to look out for. Right, so into the ones what ain't so obvious. Number 1, a coach which is pushing you to fight. If you turn up to training and you're training at a fighting gym, but obviously like nearly all gyms will have fighters and people from the general public training who don't necessarily want to fight but just training for fitness, self-defense, for any of them other sort of reasons. Don't get wrong, you do get some gyms that are just pure fighting gyms, but you won't necessarily be able to join there. You get more invited to there, or you need to ask specifically to go to that gym. So anyway, most people go to a gym which is mixed. It will have fighters and normal people who don't want to necessarily fight. But if you've got a coach who's trying to convince you should fight and pushing you to fight, if you're not ready, in my eyes that makes a bad coach. A coach should turn around and say, in his opinion, he thinks you're ready to fight, and when you're ready to fight, come to him and we'll talk more. If a coach says that to you, then that's wicked, because at least you know where you stand, and then it's up to you to build your confidence. Or if you say to him, coach, am I ready to fight? And he says, yes, you're ready to fight, and you say something along the lines of, okay, I want to fight, but I don't feel confident yet, then he's got something to work on to build your confidence up to fight. But if he pushes you to fight and you start fighting too early and you lose, it can really put you off, and it can put you off the sport, and you could have potentially been a good fighter but just maybe pushed in too early. And it's not even about necessarily being, say, like the scaredness of fighting or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking more about being mismatched, because a lot of people who, again, not everyone, but some people who train, who want to fight, have already had fights on the streets or been bullied growing up, and they're not necessarily scared of getting in there and having a tear up. But if you get in there to have a tear up and you're completely mismatched, it can really be heartbreaking, and you might not want to compete again because of that reason. Or obviously the other one, what we were just saying, like if you get mismatched and you get beaten up and it's the first time you've ever, obviously you've sparred, or you should have sparred before you started fighting, but obviously you've never really taken a decent dig before and it's your first time you really get a hiding, it can really put you off, especially if you're not ready for it. So you've got to make sure you're ready for it, not just your coach. It's a mutual agreement. You've got to be ready and your coach has got to be ready for you. So that's number one, that's the first one to look out for. Number two, this is the worst one for me. This is my absolute pet hate. I really can't stand it. But it's coaches will stop you from training at other gyms. You've got to think, if you go to them to train, they don't necessarily own you. They should, in fact, be encouraging you to train at other gyms, to spar with other people, to get that mixed feeling of training with other people. It's just going to make you a better fighter. Other coaches giving you opinions from different angles, other fighters which might not have them sort of fighters at your gym. The only way it does get a little bit complicated is if you are fighting already. If you're fighting and you're fighting out of a certain gym, but then you're hardly spending any time there and you're training at other gyms, but you still want to fight underneath this gym name, your original gym, they might get a bit funny about that because they've not seen your progress. That I can maybe understand. But like I said, no one owns you, no gym owns you. You train at that gym, and it's good to be loyal to a gym, don't get me wrong. It is good to be loyal to a gym, but you've got, I mean, I'm going into a complete different kettle of fish, this is for another video, but being loyal to a gym is good, but what happens when the gym's not loyal to you? And that might not necessarily be their fault. And what I mean by that is, if you're not getting pushed, or you're not getting the right training partners, or you're feeling as if you're not learning or not progressing no more, and you feel there's other gyms out there where you could, then the gym should realise that you're going to go off and train at other gyms. You might go back to them, they might not, but that's down to you to sort out. But if a trainer or gym owner or whatever straight away from the start says you can't train at our gym if you're training at other gyms, then in my eyes I think that makes a bad gym. And it's a shame, because the only reason why it makes a bad gym is because they're going to be holding you back. It might not necessarily be that much of a bad gym. They might have good fighters at that gym, they might have good training people. Like, I'm talking from a little bit of experience here. I've had it near where I live. There's a gym, it's really close to me, so I wanted to train there. But I also had one of my best sparring partners trained at another gym, so I wanted to also train with him now and again, and they got funny about it, so I stopped training there. And that's where I'm coming from. I was only making myself a better fighter by training with my sparring partner, who I get on really well with. We're the same size, same weight, so it's easy for us to train together. That's really hard to come by, and this gym didn't have as many people, but it was closer to my home, so it made it easier in that sense. So it can be quite hard and difficult, but anyway, I'm rambling a bit. But in my eyes, if a coach or a trainer or a gym owner says you can't train at any other gym, that definitely makes a bad coach. It's going to harm your progress, so that's definitely something to look out for. Number 3, this one is not willing to learn new techniques, or if you know a certain technique and you say it to your coach and he completely knocks it down and says, oh, it's a load of rubbish, it don't work, especially if you know it does work. The thing with MMA is it's so complicated when you have got the mix of different martial arts and things like that. Now, if you say you're a karate specialist and you grew up learning karate, but you outgrew your gym and you wanted to start training in MMA, so you went to an MMA gym, but their head coach is a Thai boxing coach. He might completely try to change the way you throw kicks and the way you train. Now, if he's trying to add to what you know, that's a good thing, that's a brilliant thing. But if he's trying to tell you what you know don't work, now that is a bad thing. And that's something you need to look out for. I think coaches these days need to be very open-minded. I mean, I've learned stuff from complete beginners before who I've considered that I was a lot better than them, without being nasty, but a lot more skilled than them, trained a lot longer than them, I've competed and they hadn't. And they've mentioned something to me and I was like how to do a move or technique, and I was like, damn, that actually works. And I use them to this day. That has actually happened to me before. So don't let a coach or let anyone tell you that certain techniques don't work, but you do have to be careful in that sense. Don't go in there too cocky. If you are a complete beginner and you've been watching Jackie Chan films and you're trying to do these spinny kicks and you're not quite doing it right and your coach is saying that that's not going to work, then in that case you've got to listen to him. But if you've come from a background of another discipline and you've pulled this move off in sparring before, etc., maybe even pulled it off in a fight and you know it works, and your coach is saying that it's not working, that's a red flag for me. So that's another thing you need to look out for. So number 4, the coach's reaction to you losing a fight or someone you know losing the fight. If you lose a fight and the coach is like screwing, going, oh, you should have done this, or you could have done that, or why didn't you do that in the fight? I just think, in my eyes, that's very bad coaching. A coach should be trying to figure out, well, why did that happen? That's what the coach should be asking himself. Why did that happen? And he shouldn't be knocking you when you're down. Because trust me, when you lose a fight, it is one of the worst feelings ever. That's the crazy thing about this sport. It's such a high to win a fight, but it can be such a low to lose a fight. And if you lose a fight and your coach is coming out going, oh, well, you didn't do what I said, or you didn't do this, there could be a reason why. You might just be having a bad day. It might have just been a bad day, a bad fight. It happens. Or it might be because you weren't understanding the instruction, what your coach was giving. So then in that way, it can be your coach's fault. No, 100%, you was the one fighting, your coach ain't fighting for you. But if you can't understand what your coach is saying, or your instructions your coach's trying to give you, or the way he's been training you and it weren't good enough, maybe the game plan was rubbish, maybe the game plan changed in the fight and you got to the corner and the coach didn't really have an answer for you. Like I said, it's never 100% the coach's fault, but the coach, in my eyes, should not be knocking you as a fighter or knocking other fighters. Even if like, I don't know, you and your teammates are fighting on an event and you do really well, but one of your other teammates does bad and the coach is sitting there slagging him off to you, that's not a good person you want to be around. Excuse me, like I said, I mean, you have to be careful and tread carefully with this, because the coach could just have said it how it is and say you're having a bad day and not necessarily slagging you off. What I mean is, when the coach is slagging someone off, and where you're a bit of a fan of the sport and you're training as well, you might agree with him by slagging the person off, going, oh yeah, he done right, but he's right, he should have done this. But a coach shouldn't be, in my eyes, a coach shouldn't be handling it like that. Like I said, the coach should be asking himself, right, why did my fighter lose a fight? How can we improve? What can we do better next time? He should be geeing you up, telling you, right, you may have lost this fight, but it's one fight. He should be telling you about all the great fighters, what lost their first couple of fights, or telling you that you'll come back stronger. This was just an awkward, difficult style of opponent for you. There'll be other opponents out there, or you may have lost this one, but I know you could do a lot better, so we get to the drawing board and work it out. You shouldn't be sitting there slagging you off, saying you was useless, or saying something like, well, you never done what I said. To me, that's just going to knock the fighter's confidence and not do the fighter any good at all. So if you notice a coach doing that, another red flag. Keep away from that coach. So number 5, last one, but don't forget there's a bonus thing I want to talk about after. But anyway, number 5, last one. So, a coach was only ever interested in the fighters. This really bugs me. Like I said, you've got to fight in gyms. You do have gyms what you go to what are for pure fighters. And deep down, especially if you're an ex-fighter yourself and a coach, some coaches, they want to train people at that gym. That's the sort of gym they want to train at. They don't want to train the average Joe doing it for a bit of self-defence or to lose weight, or maybe even kids' classes. They don't want to be training people like that. They want to be training the fighters. Now, I understand that, but if you're not a fighter, but you're looking to fight, how are you going to get a chance? How are you going to get a fair share of the training? So if they're training at a gym where it's mixed, there's maybe some people fighting there, and like I said, there's the average person going in to lose weight, get in shape, or the person who's a beginner but wants to fight. If the coach is only ever interested in the fighters, that ain't going to be no good to you. So that's something you should look out for. He could be one of the best coaches in the world, but if he's not interested in you and you're not connecting with him, you're not going to learn or progress as much as maybe you could if you've got a coach who sees potential in you, or maybe not even just seeing potential in you, but just try and keeps it fair across the board and wants to try and train everyone and helps everyone. To me, that's the person you should be gravitating more towards. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about, just very quickly, because a lot of people think that this might make a bad coach. If you come up to a situation in the gym where you're training and let's just take a groundwork jiu-jitsu scenario, because it's easier to use that as a scenario, and they've got you in a certain submission and you can't get out of it, and they show you this way and you still can't get out of it, and you say, is there any other ways to get out of it? And the coach says, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or I have to get back to you. That doesn't necessarily make a bad coach, because he might have to go look up, research, do a bit of digging himself to work out ways of getting out of this certain move. And if he comes back to you and shows you, then great. In my eyes, that's a very good coach, because he's not only getting paid to teach you, he's doing overtime and homework to keep himself up to scratch. Like I said earlier, MMA is so big and so broad, and there's so many different combinations, styles, and it's always ever evolving. So you're not always going to get a coach who's going to absolutely know everything. That's why you sometimes have different coaches in different areas. So like you might get a groundwork coach, or you might get a striking coach. But like I said, just because a coach might not know as much doesn't necessarily make him a bad coach. I mean, now I was talking about the last point a minute ago, number 5, where the coach always focusing on the fighters. If I've got a younger, newer coach who's not been coaching for that long, but he's on your case, he's interested in you, he's interested in your dieting, what you're up to doing at the gym, he's trying to help you the best he can in the gym, he's always coming over and trying to progress you and that, but he don't know as much, or he's not as knowledgeable, he's going to be more beneficial to you than a bloke who is more knowledgeable but don't really care about you because he's more interested in his fighters. Or he might be one of his coaches, sadly, what is more interested in just getting a pay packet. So, anyway, I hope this helped you. It's a bit of a minefield. It's a bit of a minefield, this one. It is hard to find good coaches. It is hard to find good gyms. So that's why I just thought I'd help you out and give you some advice. Bloody hell! This is the best student I've ever had. He's not even flinched once. Right, only joking. But on a serious note, if you want to know the one thing you definitely need to know before you start competing, then check out this video over here by Bob's head somewhere.